Welcome to Illuminati Silver. We tell you the truth about silver. Today is Saturday the 12th of February 2022, and later we will be publishing our Gold and Silver Weekly Update, so please do not miss that. But in this video, we are looking at the Silver Institute's recent report to members highlighting the fact that they are expecting a significant rise in silver demand for this year, plus an overall increase in its average price too. We shall read through their release and provide our views as we proceed. So let's take a look. Now I would like to read to you, and forgive me for reading this. I could paraphrase it, but I think it's important that we don't actually miss out on the content here. An email sent by the Silver Institute, and it was sent 2 days ago. Global silver demand forecast to reach a record 1.112 billion ounces in 2022. Now, it's not a long article, so the good news is if it's a little dry or boring, you won't have to put up with it for long, but I don't want to miss any of the important aspects that they include here. The subheading says gains will be broad-based, with growth expected from most key demand components. The outlook for silver demand is exceptionally, note that word, promising for 2022, with global silver demand forecast to rise to a record 1.112 billion ounces. The increase will be driven by a record silver industrial fabrication, which is forecast to improve by 5%, as silver's use expands in both traditional and critical green technologies. Physical silver investment demand, which consists of silver bars and bullion coin purchases, wait for this, is projected to jump 13%, achieving a 7-year high. Physical silver investment demand, consisting of silver bar and bullion coins, look at this, is projected to jump 13% in 2022, achieving a 7-year high. Silver's use in jewelry and silverware is also expected to strengthen this year by 11%, that's for jewelry, and 21% for silverware. Macroeconomic and geopolitical conditions will generally support precious metal prices in the first half of this year. However, once the pace of US policy rate hikes become more evident, the price outlook becomes more challenging. The Silver Institute is pleased to provide the following insights. In 2022, the silver market will build on the strong foundation set last year, when silver demand gained in all key sectors. Continuing the trend from 2021, this year's upside will be broad-based, with gains expected from most key demand components. Silver industrial offtake, accounting for more than half of total silver demand, and those who listen to our channel know that we constantly bang on about this, traditionally it's been between 50 and up to 60%, is projected to strengthen further, establishing a new record high in 2022. Ongoing improvements in the global economy will give silver industrial applications an additional boost, mitigating near-term headwinds from supply chain bottlenecks and the challenges in certain regions from the ongoing COVID pandemic. The outlook for silver's use in the photovoltaic industry remains bright. Government commitments to carbon neutrality have resulted in a rapid expansion of green energy projects. As a result, even with ongoing efforts to reduce silver loadings, record PV installations are expected to lift silver demand in this segment to an all-time high in 2022. Noticing we're getting lots of all-time highs coming up. Despite the prolonged worldwide chip shortage, the outlook for silver demand in automotive and 5G-related applications remain robust this year. The former has been underpinned by increasing vehicle electrification, which leads to a higher silver loading per vehicle. Meanwhile, the latter has been assisted by the acceleration of building infrastructure to support 5G networks and strong demand from mobile devices. Moreover, as chip manufacturing bottlenecks are forecast to ease gradually in 2022, the rise in silver demand for these and other electrical and electronic applications is expected to expand. Let's move on to jewellery, because it's all good news so far. Jewellery demand is forecast to strengthen by 11% this year. India remains the driving force, assisted by improving consumer sentiment. Even though the Omicron wave affected Indian demand in early 2022, an expected easing of COVID-19 restrictions and efforts by jewellery retailers to increasingly push silver to urban consumers will favour jewellery sales across India. In the US, following a significant rebound in 2021, jewellery sales expansion is expected to continue, albeit at a slower pace. Silverware fabrication is forecast to expand by 21% this year. Again, India will account for the bulk of the increase for silverware in line with jewellery. So there's an awful lot of expectation dependent now upon India. So as long as they can overcome the COVID restrictions and get back to normal, then that's looking rather good. Silver supply and market deficit. Total global silver supply is projected to rise by 7% to 1.092 billion ounces in 2022. The main contributor is silver mine production, which is forecast to grow 7% to a 6-year high this year. Now, this is crucial because a lot of people have said, well, if silver demand's going up, then the price of silver should skyrocket. But we cannot rule out the fact that as silver prices have risen, and when you compare the silver price today to a couple of years ago, it's still significantly higher. Of course, miners are going to mine more production. There isn't a drastic shortage of silver. It's just as time goes on, it generally costs more to mine that silver. Unless, of course, new technology overcomes that, or economies of scale. Now, this will be driven by higher output from primary silver mines, and traditionally, primary silver mines used to represent about 30% of the total silver mined, particularly from several large existing operations and supported by large new projects coming online. Do you remember those who listened to our channel about 5 or 6 years ago? You were told by silver gurus telling us that silver's going to the moon because it takes many, many years for silver mines to come on board, and we were going to have a serious supply crunch. Well, it does take many years. They weren't lying there. But we never did actually achieve that fantastic price rise that they were predicting. Why? Because silver from other sources were also being mined, and as the price gradually increased, there was greater incentive to mine even more. Now, the increasing silver recycling should be more modest in 2022, with volumes likely to advance by 3%, with a rise entirely due to higher industrial recycling. All other areas are expected to record lower volumes, as reduced distress selling weighs on jewellery and silverware scrap. Now, after shifting to a market deficit, that's total supply less total demand, in 2021 for the first time in 6 years, the silver market is expected to record a supply shortfall of 20 million ounces this year. However, the projected deficit is relatively modest in absolute terms, and of course, 20 million ounces versus a billion is tiny. Silver physical investment should enjoy double-digit gains in 2022 to hit a 7-year high. As the year advances, ongoing macroeconomic uncertainties and elevated inflationary pressure should encourage retail investors to seek physical silver for wealth preservation. Accordingly, profit-taking is likely to remain muted. Physical silver investment in India is also expected to strengthen on the back of improving economic conditions and positive price expectations. Silver exchange-traded products, ETPs, saw a 6% rise to 1.132 billion ounces last year. So far this year, silver ETP holdings are little changed on year-end 21 and remain close to record highs, a position which should be maintained for much of this year, and we would agree with that. Early 2022 has seen GDP growth downgraded for several major economies, along with rising financial market volatility. This points to an increasing risk that the speed of the US interest rate hiking cycle could turn out to be slower than current market expectations have allowed. Now, this is a really important point because on the one hand, they're saying we're going to have increasing inflation, and then on the other, they're saying, well, the Fed isn't going to raise rates to tackle that inflation. You can't have it both ways. So we would actually say we are expecting the US interest rates to rise, not as rapidly as perhaps the more extreme pundits of fearmongers believe it will, but equally not as slowly as others who want us to rush in and buy precious metals quickly as possible because they feel the dollar value is going to crash as a result because they are not going to hike rates, would have you believe. As a result, silver prices should initially benefit from fresh investor interest in precious metals. Now, we would agree with that, although our view is it'll be gold that those fresh investors will be more interested in from an investment point of view, but that doesn't mean silver won't benefit. Silver's high beta should also see it outperform gold, with the gold to silver ratio projected to retreat below 70 by year's end. Now, this really does depend on where the demand for silver comes from. There's an increase in silver industrial demand and an increase in jewelry, and India plays its part, then we would agree with that. But if it's purely for investment purposes, we've got to bear in mind that the general public are going to be hit quite hard this year by increased taxations, as we have to pay for all the furlough money that has been spent in our name over the last 2 years. So I'm not totally convinced that the general normal public are going to be buying huge amounts of silver. They're going to struggle to pay their bills. That said, looking longer term, then silver would certainly represent a good investment for that medium to longer term. Now, overall, the 2022 annual average silver price, basis the LBMA silver price, is forecast to be $24.80. So we're not seeing $50 silver here. 1% lower than 2021's average price of $25.14. Even so, it will still represent a historically high annual average. Now, we won't necessarily take issue with that, because we are of the opinion that silver between $20 and $30 is where it should oscillate between. And when we give our gold and silver price forecasts for 2022, which will be published on Sunday and Monday, because we'll do one for silver, one for gold, you will see that that is broadly where we are estimating the figures to rest. The Silver Institute, for those who are unaware, although most of our viewers will be fully aware of this, is the silver industry's primary voice in expanding public awareness of silver's essential role in today's world. Its mandates are to provide the global market with reliable statistics and information on silver and create and execute programs that help drive silver demand. This looks like a very reasonable, rationed report to us. It's not predicting these enormously outrageous figures for the price of silver, but it's also not telling us it's going to collapse to zero. At the same time, it's heartening to see that silver demand will increase, and we would agree with that. The issue, though, is so is supply increasing, and whilst there will be a deficit, we have to bear this in mind. A 20 million ounce deficit is tiny when you consider that already above ground, depending on whom one asks, there is anything from 1 billion to 2 billion ounces regularly available from loose hands to sell their silver. And while that continues, you are not likely to see enormous jumps in the price of silver. That said, looking at this for the long term, it is very heartening to see, but of course, as always, we must never forget the fact that as prices increase, and they've already indicated they predict that the average price of silver for this year will be one of the highest ever, the problem with that is, of course, silver mines will be more tempted to put more investment into mining even more silver to take advantage of those higher prices. Let us know what you think. We'll be sharing our views on Sunday and Monday. Thank you for following this, and we'd be very interested in your comments. Meanwhile, please give this video a thumbs up to tell YouTube to spread it around. Subscribe if you haven't done so, and if you have done so, make sure you press the bell sign so you're notified of other videos as and when they are published. Illuminati silver owners come from a background of banking, international wealth management and economics. Having now retired from these worlds, we are not qualified to give investment advice. Therefore, this and other productions must not be deemed to be giving such advice and merely represent the personal views of its owners.